let's bring this thing to a close. It's time to wrap January up with the final list of the marathon, my top 10 best episodes of FiM. Unlike last week's list, this one was definitely more difficult to put together. I had 25 episodes in the original draft pick, which I then narrowed down to 13 and narrowed down again to 11. I didn't want to have a tie, so one episode had to get the boot. Needless to say, some painful decisions had to be made to make this list, so let's see which episodes were lucky enough to make the cut. Number 10. Putting Your Hoof Down. This episode was brought up in my video on commonly disliked episodes. The common complaint is that Fluttershy is quote unquote out of character, but that was kinda, the point. Fluttershy is a character that rarely shows aggression, so I don't expect her to know where the line is between assertive and overboard. But when she does cross that line, it's clear that she immediately regrets it. If the lesson in this episode didn't take until season 5 to actually stick, it would have been higher on the list, but it was still good enough to make the number 10 spot. Number 9. Applebuck Season. It's one of the first and one of the best episodes that featured Best Pony in the spotlight. Applebuck Season was a great introduction to Applejack's character, and she quickly became one of my favorite characters because of it. The show was still getting its feet wet at the time, and with the type of job that Applejack had, she was a great vehicle to use for the classic accept help from your friends lesson. While other AJ episodes have come close, to me, nothing beats Applebuck Season. Yet. Number 8. Brotherhood Social. A great blend of comedy and feels that finally gives a good look at one of the more silent members of the supporting cast. Number 7. Lesson 0. I was kinda meh about Twilight in season 1. She was a character that I neither liked nor disliked, she was just there. The episodes that had her as the main focus were okay, but they didn't leave a lasting impression on me. And then this episode happened. I enjoy seeing what happens when characters are put out of their element, and for Twilight, who was used to being organized, punctual, and having her schedule under control most of the time, it was awesome to see how she dealt with that control being taken away. It was definitely a sight to behold, and it was a great follow-up to the season 2 premiere. Number 6. For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The CMC killed it in season 4, and out of all of their episodes, For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils was my favorite. Between the different sibling dynamics that the show has done, Rarity and Sweetie Belle's is one of the most interesting. As the older sibling in my family, it was cool to see things from the younger sibling's point of view. Having Luna come in to help Sweetie out and prevent her from making the same mistakes that she made was a great touch, and this common thread that they share makes this episode my favorite of the Luna Dream trilogy. Number 5. The Cutie Mark Chronicles. Once the concept of cutie marks was introduced in Call of the Cutie, one of the first questions that came to my mind was how the main 6 got theirs, and the Cutie Mark Chronicles answered that question. Premiering towards the end of season 1, when we were still getting to know the characters, this episode gave some great backstory to the main cast, and opened up a ton of possibilities for their futures. Number 4. Wonderbolt Academy. It's rare that a single episode changes my entire perception of one character, but Wonderbolt Academy did it, and it deserves recognition for doing so. All of Dash's best traits are on display here, and the fact that she was willing to choose her personal morals over her lifelong dream really says a lot about her. Prior to this episode, my opinion of Dash wasn't very high, but Wonderbolt Academy made me have a change of heart. It's my favorite Dash episode, and with my next video being a character talk on Dash, you can expect this episode to show up. Number 3. Inspiration Manifestation. This is how you do a Spike episode. I wasn't sure what to think of this going into it. Spike wasn't a character that I particularly cared for, but even I could see that he got the short end of the stick on more than one occasion, but this episode was one of the rare exceptions. For some, it's really hard to tell a friend when you think they're doing something wrong, because there's that underlying fear that the confrontation will ruin the friendship. Arguably, Spike had an even harder time because Rarity was not only a friend, but a friend that he had feelings for. So that fear of sabotaging the relationship is even bigger. But even with all that, Spike was able to put those feelings aside and do the right thing. And what makes this even better is that he does it all by himself. No one had to do it for him. No one had to tell him what to say. And no one had to push him in the right direction. It was all him. Inspiration Manifestation was not only one of Spike's better stories, it was his best story. Number 2. Sweetn Elite. No top episodes list, at least none by me, is complete without an episode centered on Best Unicorn. Sweetn Elite was the first episode to give a good look into the city of Canterlot, and Rarity, naturally, was the most fitting character to follow for an episode like this. It's also got one of the best songs in the series and is one of the best looking MLP episodes with Rarity's costume changes and the various locales across Canterlot. Similar to Wonderbolt's Academy, Rarity was willing to sacrifice her dream for what she knew was right, and it shows how much she values her friends. While it's not number 1, Sweetn Elite is still my most rewatched episode in the series. Now, for the honorable mentions, I picked 5 out of the other 15 episodes that did not make the cut, and those episodes are Look Before You Sleep for being the Book of Genesis for the Church of Applejack, Flight to the Finish for being the first in Season 4's streak of awesome CMC episodes, Simple Ways for showing just how well AJ knows Rarity compared to Season 1, Twilight Time for having the CMC take a logical approach to finding their talents, for once, and Luna Eclipsed, which was the one episode that was this close to making it to the number 10 spot. My pick for the best episode of... Who am I kidding? You know it's a Canterlot wedding. Best finale, best villain, best song. I just can't help but love this episode. When I was first getting into the show back in 2012 and I finally reached the end of season 2, this episode blew me away. I did raise an eyebrow at Shining and Cadence's sudden introduction, and I would have preferred if they had prior establishment in the show. It also kinda sucked that Luna did pretty much nothing in this episode, but the rest of A Canterlot Wedding is awesome enough for me to forgive it. The show kinda had to do it because Hasbro wanted to sell toys, but DHX took the wedding scenario and got creative with it. If they were gonna do it, they were gonna do it as well as they could, and the end result was a phenomenal episode that I'll always love. Until a better episode comes along, A Canterlot Wedding is my pick for the best episode of FiM. So that does it for the January list marathon. I got some cool stuff in the works for the months to come, so I hope you guys stick around for that as well. So what are your picks for the top 10 best episodes of FiM? Swarm that comment section below or bug me on social media, and consider supporting me through Patreon or PayPal art commissions. Until next time, keep it sketchy, folks.